Well, hello, and welcome to another edition of Android Faithful. We're your weekly source for Android-related news, hardware, apps, discussion, fun times, roller coasters, whatever you want. Professional wrestling, we got it. I'm Ron Richards, and I'm joined with...
Oh, yeah! I'm the Macho Man, Jason Howell. Oh, yeah.
It doesn't take much to get Jason to do the Macho Man. And, of course, we're here with...
MIshaal Rahman.
Welcome, MIshaal. How you doing, sir?
Pretty good.
So Win is unfortunately not with us. She's abroad. She's traveling to Japan again, I believe.
Lucky her.
Yeah, lucky her indeed. I don't see her in the chat yet, so hopefully she's off doing fun stuff in Japan and not watching her show like she did last time.
Japan right now. Is it like early morning or almost?
Is it tomorrow? I don't know.
Well, I've got this tool called Google. 9:17 a.m. in Japan right
All right,
now.
so breakfast in Japan. So, but in her place, we welcome back the one, the only Mr. Juan Bagnell, the most guested Android Faithful guest.
I still am?
You still are. You're at the top of the list.
Oh, love it.
Welcome back, sir. How you been?
I'm doing great. This is breaking another streak of me being on a show where Jason is actually on
This is weird.
the show.
Yeah. We had a
It's
long
not how it's
streak.
supposed to go.
We had a long streak on All About Android, continuing into Android Faithful, that Juan and Jason never appeared on the show together.
yes!
And what people don't realize is that Jason and Juan do not get along. So this is going to be an interesting episode. It's
gonna be,
We had to keep them separated for many years.
I just feel like you coming in with the Macho Man Randy Savage, it stole a lot of the wind out of my sails. I was gonna come in with the Spider-Man quote, like "You ain't going nowhere."
Buzzsaw.
You know, like yeah, but now it just feels like I'm just kind of copying you, and that's not we don't want that.
Which, let's be honest, you are, Juan.
Right.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Oh, and we're back in it now. And listen, Jason, Juan knows what he did. He said he was sorry. Jason, you said you would accept the apology and move on.
You know what? I just want to clear the air. I absolutely adore Juan, and I'm so psyched that Juan is here.
Yes, there's no.
I am so stoked to join you guys again. Yeah. So
well,
I'm
Juan,
very
since you were last year, since you were last with us, I don't know if you've heard the news, but we got T-shirts now. Last week we launched Android Faithful merch over on Threadless. So now you can head over to androidfaithful.threadless.com and you can purchase your T-shirt, mouse pads, stickers, skateboards, whatever you want. Threadless has got it, and it's been super exciting to see not only people ordering it, but people have been receiving them and posting online. I know we shared one. Somebody posted to Instagram. We shared that one earlier today. A couple of listeners have sent in pictures of them in their merch. Our first design is the Android Faithful frequency design that Win designed. And yeah, so if you wanna show your pride of being an Android Faithful listener, head over to androidfaithful.threadless.com. Very exciting.
Yeah.
So
I ordered mine like the day before we announced it. I'm still waiting on it to
still
arrive.
haven't
I think
gotten it?
mine
Oh,
will
my
be here on Friday.
Yeah,
What about
I
yours,
think
Jason?
mine's arriving the same day, MIshaal.
Okay, good.
So next Tuesday we'll be sporting the threads.
Yep. And
I'm definitely picking up some stickers for you guys. That's
thank you so
legit.
much. That's awesome.
For sure.
Yeah, we're very excited for that. We're going to have more designs coming soon, so stay tuned for that. And then also just one quick bit of business. We're hoping to go to Google I/O, and we're considering maybe doing a live show on the night of May 14th. So if you are interested in attending that, if you're in the San Francisco Bay Area, if you're just a regular Android Faithful fan, you don't need to be going to Google I/O. It will be totally free. Anybody can get in. Let us know if you'd be interested in coming. Go to bit.ly/AF Google I/O, all one word in lowercase, and just let us know if you'd be interested in attending and give us your email, and that way we can keep you posted on it. Some people responded last week, getting some interest. We're seeing if we can make this thing come together. It might not happen, so no promises. But
But the more that we hear from you, if you're actually going to be in the area and you actually have authentic interest,
Yep.
let us know, because if we get enough response on this, then it becomes worth it for us to kind of look into this. And I mean, we would absolutely love to do something like this, but not if it's going to be an empty room.
Right, exactly.
So we just want to know that if we do it, it's gonna work. So let us know.
Yeah. So that's at bit.ly/AF Google I/O, all one word in lowercase. And we'll put it in the show notes on the show tonight, so you can, if you want to find that link, you can go find it over on androidfaithful.com or in your podcast little notes thing. So
Your little
Hooray.
podcast notes thing.
All right, that's all of our opening business. It was slow news week, but there's some interesting news to chew on, which I'm sure we will get into it. And the biggest news of all, MIshaal, we look to you to break down the second developer preview of Android 15 hit last week, right? Last Thursday, I believe.
Yeah, that's right, Ron. And I disagree with it being a slow news week because a new Android developer preview is not the definition of slow.
In the grand scheme of
considering
things.
how much there is to talk
like,
about in this
True.
release.
It is a lot.
So-
Yeah.
Poor
So just to
Michelle is
start
like,
off
guys,
with-
I've been working my butt off for you to say it was a slow news week.
What
Okay.
more do I got to do around here?
Right now to my stream to show you guys basically everything that I've been discovering and everything Google announced. So, yeah, the second developer preview of Android 15 is here. Android 15 DP2 adds some user interface elements to ensure a more consistent user experience for devices that support satellite connectivity. As you can see here, it's like a system notification says you're auto-connected to satellite. This update also adds some new APIs that apps can use to detect when a device is connected to satellite, and also lets SMS RCS apps use satellite connectivity to send and receive texts. Android 15 is also adding better support for clamshell folding folds, aka flippables. There's a new property that developers can use to show their app on the cover screen of flippables. This is opt-in, though, and only works on select flippables that add support for this feature. Another feature is that apps can add support for detecting when a screen is being recorded. So apps that are performing sensitive operations can use this to tell when they're being recorded, and then they can inform the user about it. I'm scrolling through right here. Unfortunately, Google didn't share a screenshot of what cover screen support looks like or what the screen recording detection looks like, so you just have to use your imagination right now. They did share a screenshot, though, of the new PDF changes that have been announced in Android 15 DP2. So Android is making some big changes to the PDF rendering API. The previous version of the API that apps could use basically just supported print previewing, whereas this new iteration of the PDF rendering API allows for more advanced things like rendering password-protected files or annotations. And this is being backported to Android 11 and later through an update to a Project Mainline module. There's also a bunch of other things like an observe mode in the NFC stack that lets supported devices listen but not respond to NFC readers. A new API that let apps, instead of the OS, decide how much to dim SDR elements on screen so that they don't look too dim right next to HDR elements. As you can see here, if you're watching the video feed, there's like an image on the left and the video image on the right. And if you dim SDR photos too much next to HDR photos, then it can make the SDR photos look really bad in comparison. And then there's also a new support for the CTA-2075 standard that helps apps reduce audio loudness inconsistencies. But this requires that the audio content itself provides some loudness metadata and that the app that's playing the audio also supports this new API. And there's a whole bunch of other changes in this blog post. Like, there's way too much to talk about. And a lot of it's kind of nitty-gritty developer focused. So if you're a developer, I highly recommend you actually go through and read this full blog post on the Android Developers blog. But if you're actually interested in finding out what's new in Android 15 DP2 and you install it on your device, there's a couple of minor changes that have carried over from Android 14 QPR3, but there's also some bigger ones, including this new audio sharing page that you'll find when you open up settings and go to connected devices. This page has a toggle that lets you share audio, and this enables others to listen to your media along with you, so long as they have compatible headphones. And this audio sharing feature specifically is referring to Auracast, which is the marketing term for Bluetooth LE audio broadcasts. Basically, you have a source device, in this case would be your Android phone, starts broadcasting a signal over Bluetooth Low Energy that other Auracast supporting devices nearby can pick up on. They can join your Auracast session to listen to whatever you're listening to. They don't directly join or pair with your device like traditional Bluetooth works. Think of Auracast more like a radio broadcast over the air that your car picks up. Android supported Auracast since Android 13, but Google's kind of making it more prominent and easier to create and join sessions through a new settings page in Android 15. And of course, this requires your device to actually have the hardware to support LE Audio and Auracast, which not every device does. The next major change is a fix to the Android webcam feature that I've been complaining about a lot on previous episodes. They're finally adding a mode that allows you to take full advantage of the camera sensor on your Pixel phone. So if you boot up Android 15 TP2 on your Pixel and you open up the webcam feature, you'll notice there's now this new HQ button in the top left. And selecting this enables a high quality mode, which basically disables some thermal optimizations so that you can take full advantage of the full quality of your camera. And if you're wondering like how much different is the quality, I actually did like a YouTube video right here just showing the quick comparison, like the standard mode. You can see right here if you're watching the video feed, just me and my acting a little derpy, and then I switch over to the high quality mode. Like there's more detail on my face all around. If you just take a look, obviously, if you're listening to the audio feed, you can't see the difference at all. And if you're wondering, does this actually like impact the battery life and does it make your phone overheat? Well, coincidentally, I actually enabled this feature while I was recording episode, I believe, 35 of the podcast, and I ran it for about 2.5 hours. And I think my phone battery level only dropped about 8%, and that was because I was using
Wow.
a slow charging cable, and also my Pixel 8 Pro's battery temperature only reached a peak of about 37.6 degrees Celsius, which is not at all very hot. So I wouldn't be really concerned about this high quality mode's effect on your Pixel devices like battery longevity or its lifespan. So I would enable it once it rolls out for your device. And of course, not every device supports this Android webcam feature. Right now, mostly only Pixels do. But a feature that will be coming to more devices, especially large screen devices like tablets and foldables, is a toggle to switch back to the old taskbar style. So in Android 12L, Google introduced this taskbar style that you can see here if you're watching the video feed. It spans the entire width of the display, and it's always persistent on screen unless you held down on an empty area, and then you could hide it manually. That kind of took up too much space on foldables. So in Android 13 QPR2, they revamped the taskbar. So you have this kind of pill-shaped bottom bar at the bottom, and that only appears temporarily when you swipe up from the bottom. So this is the new style on the right, and this is the old style on the left. The old style is better for multitasking because it's always on screen, so you can easily switch between apps and easily launch apps in split screen. The new style is better for saving screen real estate. Um, if you want to switch back to the old style, to do some more work and switch between apps, this new always show taskbar toggle, which you can access by long pressing on any empty spot on the taskbar, will let you switch between the old style and the new style for the taskbar. And this is available on large screen devices. And it depends on whether or not the OEM actually implements it. Like this is available right now on Pixel Tablet and Pixel Fold, but other OEMs like OnePlus, Samsung could offer this feature if they wanted to. Right now, like the OnePlus Open, for example, it has a taskbar, but it only uses the old persistent style taskbar.
When it
And
when
then-
it auto hides, is there a way to like to swipe up from the bottom and have it show for a second and then disappear again, or there's no way to do that on a temporary?
Yeah, that's how the
basis?
that's how the new taskbar works by default.
Okay.
Like by default,
Well,
it's
I can
always
get behind
hidden,
that.
and then you have to swipe up to
Yeah.
show it.
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Next up is a feature for foldables. So basically, Google has added a new way to transition apps from the inner screen of a foldable to the outer screen of a foldable. And I'm going to play a little video right here. As you can see on the inner screen, this user had Telegram open. Then they closed their Pixel Fold and they opened it up after the swiping on the lock screen, and they were able to continue using Telegram on the outer display. So previously on the Pixel Fold, you couldn't choose when you wanted to transition an app from the inner screen to the outer screen. You only had the option of transitioning apps that are full screen. So like a full screen game or a full screen YouTube video would transition. But now you have this new swipe up to continue toggle in the display settings on the Pixel Fold that allows you to choose specifically which app you want to transition. And this is actually borrowed directly from the OnePlus Open. In fact, the same setting has the same name on the OnePlus Open. And I personally think this is the superior way to handle transitioning from the unfolded to the folded state, because you can pick and choose which apps you want. On the Z Fold 5, in comparison, you have to go into settings and specifically pick the apps from an app list that you want to be able to transition like that. So this is coming to any foldable that wants to implement it. Right now, it's only available on the Pixel Fold on Android 15 DP2, but other foldables could also add it. Next
Nice.
up,
I loved that feature on the Open for sure.
Yeah,
That was really intuitive, very intuitive. It was like one of the actions that when you did it, you were like, okay, this is the way it needs to be on other foldables too.
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely a very useful feature. Next up, not going to talk about this one too much because I talked about it on last week's episode, and it's the built-in app archiving feature. It's live and fully functional in DP2, and it works exactly like how I described in this article I wrote for Android Authority, which I talked about last week. Honestly, the biggest change in Android 15 is that for the app archiving feature, it was previously inexclusive to the Google Play Store, but now on Android 15, there are APIs that Google has added that can be used by third-party launcher and third-party App Store developers to add support for app archiving. So this video I'm playing right here quickly just demonstrates the app archiving feature. I archive the Uber app, and that replaces this. It significantly reduces the storage size. It goes from like 400 megabytes to like 18 megabytes, a dramatic difference. And then I just tap on the icon after it's archived. It re-downloads it from the Play Store, and then I'm booted back into it without losing any data. That's the TLDR of app archiving. If you're familiar with iOS at all, they have a feature called offload apps, and it works pretty much the same, like in practice. But under the hood, of course, it's different since it's a different operating system. And lastly, you'll notice that after you update your phone to DP2, you are now required to authenticate yourself before you're allowed to change the USB mode. So as you can see in this photo right here, I have this biometric prompt dialog. It's asking me to verify my fingerprint before I can change the USB mode between any of the two. This is honestly a pretty minor security change, but you might find it useful if you share your device and you don't want someone, I don't know, like plugging your phone into their PC and dumping your files on their PC, without your permission. There are some other changes that I haven't talked about in Android 15 DP2. Like I said, there's a whole bunch of things mentioned on this blog post I didn't talk about. Also, some other stuff that I didn't talk about that's actually in the build that I talked about on my usual deep dive Twitter thread. So if you're interested in learning more, I highly recommend you go through those two resources.
So looking at last year with Android 14, as we're looking at the calendar, right? Are we on schedule with Developer Preview 2, or are they ahead or behind schedule? Do we remember? Does anyone remember when this happened? Let me. I should have looked it up.
I think we're on schedule.
You think we're on schedule?
Yeah.
Let's see. Preview 2.14. Let's see if we got a date on that. Android Developer Preview 2 came out March 8th, 2023. Okay, so we're a little behind.
Google's
schedule.
Late.
A little behind, a couple of weeks behind schedule. Google, a week or so, right?
It should just work, guys.
I
think it's safe to say it came out in March. We're on schedule. That's fair.
Yeah. Sometime within the month of March. It's fine. Yeah. It's fine.
All right. Well, that was a lot. Juan, are you keeping track of the Android of what's coming in Android 15?
Yeah, I've been following up.
The audio
and
stuff.
again,
I thought of you there, as MIshaal was talking about.
Absolutely. So things like that. I always kind of bristle a little bit because we get sort of this. It seems like we're going to go longer and longer and longer between more visually exciting changes to the Android operating system, which is really what I prefer. I like seeing these kind of like intermediary and iterative updates where we get these quality of life features, having those audio controls. I think Android is long overdue having sort of a consistent system for helping you protect your hearing. It's something I've soapboxed on all of your podcasts every visit that I make. But then also just I want to see Google making these steps towards our phones becoming more competitive computing devices. And so when we see better operation for foldables, when we see more consistent from Google, more consistent support for video output. That's the kind of stuff that gets me really excited. It doesn't need to look flashy or pretty or change like animations all on me all the time just so that it's novel. I want to see if I spend a bit more on a phone, can I do more with it to displace other gadgets around me?
Cool.
And MIshaal, are you using the video mode that you were showing off there right now on your camera?
Right now, no. I'm using the Logitech Brio, just my usual webcam. But
Oh, okay.
as I mentioned, I was using it on episode 35. Like I did
Yeah.
have a high quality mode enabled, and I was actually using it that whole time, 2.5 hours.
Well, it's funny because like as someone who's recently embraced the Android as webcam functionality, I was shocked at, which we'll get into a little later in the show. I was shocked at the lack of function it had, other than purely just being a pass-through camera, and I think you could choose the zoom level, and that's about it currently right now on Android 14. So it's nice to see you're getting a little more out of it with Android 15.
And it's kind of interesting seeing the arms race too, because Microsoft just improved support for their phone link to improve webcam functionality in certain phones that, like, again, it's like we're trying to approach a lot of these problems from both sides of, well, what is the phone telling the computer and what is the computer asking for from the phone?
Right.
So there's definitely something happening. We want to see improved functionality. We want to see some of these features start getting better. And we're kind of coming up with multiple solutions to arrive at similar outputs.
Yeah, definitely.
So-
It's a brave new world, that's for sure.
Yeah. Speaking of like the multiple different competing webcam things, like Android 14's Android 15's webcam feature that Google built is completely generic on purpose because it's meant to be as widely accessible as possible. You're like literally creating a standard generic USB webcam slash like I think the mode is called UVC or Universal Video Class, and that's like that allows your Android phone to turn into a webcam that can be recognized by any platform, including Linux, Mac OS, Windows, even other Android devices, and anything that supports a USB webcam will support your Android phone. Versus Microsoft's Phone Link webcam feature, requires you to install Phone Link on your phone, requires you to install the Phone Link software on your PC, and requires like the maker to actually add support for it. So like, there's a lot more limitations there, but obviously it offers far more advanced controls. And I kind of wouldn't be surprised if Google is working on something similar to integrate it better with Chromebooks, like a more advanced wireless webcam feature for Pixel and Chromebooks.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense.
Cool.
For sure.
Ecosystems.
There it is, the E word.
Speaking of ecosystem.
Speaking of ecosystem, yeah. Well, so Android 15 developer preview 2. Go read the blog post over on the Android website. But speaking of ecosystem, the other big news that dropped in the last week was the fact that the U.S. Department of Justice officially accused Apple of anti-competitive behavior in the smartphone market, and we got a lot of people asking, I know this is an Android, but are you guys going to talk about this? And it was like, there's no way we can't talk about this, right? Because this has this, like this graphic on the Verge article that we're talking about, this will reverberate through the entire industry, the results of this. Basically what they said was, Apple exercises its monopoly power to extract more money from consumers, developers, content creators, artists, publishers, small businesses, and merchants, among others, listed in the charges. They cited app/service stickiness, limiting cross-platform compatibility with smartwatches, limiting third-party digital wallets, and yes, the big one, damaging messaging between iPhone and Android. And a large part of the case has to do with the platform lock-in. And we heard, through the various coverage and stuff that I heard that there were several emails that stuck out that the Department of Justice got their hands on, including Steve Jobs complaining about how easy it was for people to switch from iPhone to Android, which is pretty damning. And then apparently Tim Cook's famous response to what should I tell my mother about getting, fuzzy pictures, and his response saying, tell her to buy an iPhone, is also now kind of blowing him up in his face. Some interesting other little notes that came out of this regarding green bubbles. The Department of Justice points out that Apple's choices mislead consumers to believe that Android phones are worse, even though it's Apple's choices that make the experience worse on Android phones.
Yep.
Thank you, Department of Justice. I want to go down to DC and hug you for not that I'm happy this is happening to Apple and stuff like that, but for summing up the issue that we've been dealing with for a decade now. Like, oh my God. Also interesting, Apple responded to the DOJ charges with that the Apple Watch doesn't work with Android by admitting they tried for 3 years to bring it to Android and scrapped it because of technical limitations, which I feel like
technical limitations. Apple of all companies couldn't figure it out.
Exactly.
Oh, Wahapa.
Yeah, you're gonna tell me if Apple just drives up the freeway to Mountain View and is like, "Hey, we want to make this work on Android." Google wouldn't bend over backwards to make that happen and help them.
Yeah.
So yeah. So it's early on. The case just dropped. It's likely going to take a while, and we know that the DOJ is also looking at Google, and as they've looked at Microsoft in the past. So this seems like a big kind of government reckoning that's happening across the tech space. Juan, do you think that the DOJ has any merit here, or are they fishing?
So first off, I'm going to.
You're a lawyer, right? You have a legal degree. Yeah,
absolutely. I was literally just gonna say I am not a lawyer. This is a regulatory space that I have been paying attention to a lot. If anyone catches my Monday morning podcast, if there's ever any FCC or FTC news, that's what I lead with. I love the intersection of technology and politics because everything we do is politics. And I have been advocating for a lot more big tech scrutiny from regulators. And right now, when it rains, it pours. Because on top of this, we just got news that there's going to be a series of class action lawsuits that are following the DOJ's lawsuit against Apple, saying, well, if what the DOJ says is accurate, then that means Apple has artificially been inflating the prices of phones. And so there's a consumer aspect, a consumer angle to this. And we just caught another wave of investigations that are going to be happening through the EU because of the DMA. So companies like Amazon and Apple, they're complying with the DMA, but not really. So now the EU is going to be investigating their behavior and their responses to new regulations as well. I would kindly ask people to maybe stay some of their decision making on all of the editorials that are coming out. Because if you're an Apple publication, surprisingly, a lot of the editorials on Apple publications are, well, the DOJ, this is a laughable lawsuit, nothing, they're just upset that Apple's successful. And if you're a more like Windows or Android kind of publication, oh, we've been preaching about this for years, Apple needs a regulatory correction, blah, 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 blah. This is really easy language to just go to the Department of Justice, get the PDF. It is 88 pages long, but if you're a techie at all, it's a really easy read for 88 pages. And read their arguments, read their case, read their because none of this is evidence either. You know, this is what's going to come out during the court cases. Right now, they're just saying this is what we believe has been the market impact from Apple's anti-competitive business practices. And then we need to actually put that evidence out in a court of law. We need to see the disclosures. We need to see the arguments. We need to see how the judge responds to evidence. We need to see all of that play out. But instead of trying to say like, oh, well, you know, this guy over at applemacfanboy.net said that he talked to a lawyer and that this was not a good case, the case hasn't been made yet. So instead, if you read the actual brief, it's fascinating. It's fascinating to see how the DOJ came to this place. This is a court case 10 years in the making, because we actually had another sort of legal action that was planned against Apple, and the DOJ pulled it. And again, they didn't think their case was as strong as it could have been. They didn't think they had the data to do it. Now they do. And so it just seems to be the air right now. If it's a massive tech corporation conglomerate amoeba swallowing up all of these other services, I think we're all a little tired of how we're being treated as end users, as consumers, as citizens with this kind of big data strategy. And I hope this paves the way for other things like getting the FTC to go after ISPs that monitor everything you do on your internet connection and sell off your data. I think this is the right step in the right direction for going after automobile manufacturers that sell your data off to insurance companies. Like, we're due some kind of correction because the laws that we've had in place have been inadequate to adapt to a changing technology landscape. And this is the first step in trying to mitigate the problems that we have as end users.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's so easy to fall into the blue bubble, green bubble trap, or the Apple versus
Exactly,
you know. And like, and I say this, I'm doing the show on a Mac desktop, right? So like, I don't hate Apple. I know we play it up and the wrestling angle of it and all the time just because it's fun.
That's fun.
I do think that they have. They've misled, and we've talked a lot about the messaging stuff on the show over the years and stuff like that. I do think that is a big case. But the thing is that like DOJ is looking at Google too. They're looking like no one should be safe from this sort of scrutiny. And
Amazon and Facebook, Microsoft,
right.
They all need a regulatory scrutiny market correction because of how we're running headlong into new services. And this is what we should want. I mean, as fans of Google, we need to know what the rules are. We need to know what the boundaries are. And we can't let a corporation decide for us free of regulatory oversight. This is how far we'll go.
Yep.
Okay, you know what? We've kind of been doing that for a while, and I think it's okay if we kind of nudge the pendulum back a bit. And we say there are concerns, and we need to address those concerns. The DOJ is a broadsword. I was really hoping that this kind of course correction would come from smaller agencies. This is going to be a big, lumbering court case coming from the DOJ. But
buckle up for years.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's going to take a long time. And Apple's going to drag this out, and the DOJ is going to drag this out. But you march the army you have, not the army you want, right? So this is what we're in line for. And if nothing else, it just needs that public disclosure, the change of perception, where we have all these truthy things that we've been saying since like the 90s. Macs don't get viruses. Like we keep letting that marketing kind of take over. And we just need better information out to consumers so that they can make better informed purchases and also know how better to protect themselves. And this is, I think, going to be a valuable resource for us to be able to point our family and friends to and say, hey, you like what you like. I'm not trying to tell you not to like your phone or something, but this is what's really true, not the commercial that you saw that you felt good about.
Yep.
Just seeing this case and the reaction to it, I kind of had like two broad takeaways that I think are kind of important. The first is specifically to do with the case, and it's something that I've also noted when Epic sued Google and other lawsuits against Apple and Google in the past, is that the public marketing of certain features and the reasoning behind why certain things, the way things are in iOS and Android, differs heavily from what Apple and Google and many other companies are actually reasoning internally for why they do certain things. So like, just to give you an example, like why does Apple block third-party payment vendors from accessing the NFC chip on the iPhone? The reason they say publicly is for security reasons, but we all know from like these lawsuits reveal the emails internally what they really think, and it's because, surprise, money, because they can get a cut of all the transactions if people are forced to use Apple Pay. Like a lot of these things, you see the way people defend Apple's practices, online on social media. But when you pull the curtains back and actually read the reason behind a lot of these things, it's not actually fully, like, I would say maybe like 20% of the real reason is actually security and privacy. But it just so happens to also entrench their business and lock users into their ecosystem even further, right? Yeah. So like, why are so many people upset about Apple being forced to ship USB-C port on their latest iPhones? Because a lot of them have spent maybe hundreds of dollars on Lightning accessories and Lightning chargers and cables and etc., right? But who put them into that position in the first place by locking them into the Lightning accessory ecosystem? It was Apple, right? But they're blaming the EU for forcing them to, actually open up and, actually like use accessories that everyone else is using. And it's actually helpful for the consumer because they have more choice now. They have more choice in hardware. But consumers don't see it that way because, they've been forced into this position by Apple, and now they're kind of just have to live with it, which is like brought me up to another point. Like, I don't know if you guys follow a little bit of Apple news. The iOS 18, there was like this big exclusive about iOS 18 is finally getting support for being able to arbitrarily move apps on the home screen, and people are going wild over this feature.
Whoa!
Android has had over a decade, right? And my reaction to that is like, it's kind of silly how excited people are justify this feature. Like, they're willing to put up with almost any downside or, you know, minor inconvenience on iOS because they honestly have no choice, right? Like on Android, if I didn't like a decision that OnePlus made on the OnePlus Open, the software, right, I could just buy another Android phone and my OnePlus Watch 2 would still work with it. My Galaxy Buds 2 Pro would still work with it. All my other devices would still work with it.
Or you
if
could,
I
or you
hated
could
something in iOS, I would have to spend way more money to leave the ecosystem.
Yeah, or you
entirely,
could even,
right?
or you can
can't-
even if you don't like something OnePlus did, you could switch your launcher.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
could, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
you've got so much more flexibility as opposed to the iPhone where there's no flexibility, right?
So,
Hardware
One of the
freedom
reasons
gives
I
you
think-
software freedom too.
yeah.
Yeah, big time. One of the reasons why I think the DOJ is now feeling a bit more confident in making this play are the recent sales numbers here in North America. So we have a very antiquated view on monopolistic business practices, calling something a monopoly. And Apple is now encroaching on his 70% market share if we start talking about performance phones or premium devices. It's not the 50-50 or the international markets, because this is the US DOJ. They're not going to care about Apple only being 20% of the market internationally. We're talking here in the United States. But this is also the first step in trying to broach a conversation where it's inadequate for Apple to say there is competition, just leave everything you've invested in, leave everything that you've purchased, throw away all of your behavior, all of your sweat equity, learning how to use these products, and just leave the Apple ecosystem. You always have a choice, and that's not a choice. In the way that people relate to and utilize their devices today, there is a 100% monopoly on Apple devices by Apple. And now we need to see what kind of market pressure and what kind of business practices have enabled Apple to put a squeeze on their own customers. Often when we talk about this stuff, it's with the kind of side realization that we're frustrated on our family members' behalfs, right? That whenever Apple does something, eventually it hits us, but who does it hurt first? It hurts Apple owners first, because there is a 100% monopoly on that ecosystem. So we don't have court precedent for cars, right? Because the idea is you can always drive on roads. You don't have to be beholden to one automobile manufacturer to drive from California to Arizona. But that's different in the world of technology. And it's different moving from laptops to cell phones. Like we've kind of put these dividers into phones, treating phones like appliances in ways that we've never treated laptops or desktops. So this is going to be a really interesting court case to see it play out, because our very definition of the word monopoly is going to be challenged by both sides, both the defendants and the plaintiffs, so that we can start sussing out what does a 21st century economy look like, and what is the relationship between an end user, a manufacturer, software developer. All of these pieces are going to be affected.
All right. Well, big story.
Grab your popcorn.
We're gonna keep tracking it for sure. But there's other stuff going on in the world of Android, right? Especially over in the Samsung corner of the world, right, Jason?
Yeah, another popcorn moment in the world is the Samsung Galaxy A55 from one massive behemoth in the iPhone to the A55. No, the A55 is great, but I'm just trying to crack a joke here. Samsung for a very long time has not had seamless updates. And what are seamless updates? I think this rolled out like 8 years ago at this point. But basically what it allows for is for your OS update or firmware or security update, whatever it is, to download, verify, and install in the background. It's kind of like a multi-volume system. That's not the right word, but anyways, it's happening on, it's like an A/B system happening behind the scenes. So while you're still running the phone on another part of the phone, all this stuff is happening instead of having to like power down and wait all that time for the update to go through. My dog's going nuts right now. You can do it while you're running the phone, and then the next time that you boot, it might take a little bit longer than your standard boot, but it'll be pretty quick because all this work has been done. Seamless updates. Well, now Samsung's been pretty much not part of the seamless updates party, but now they are. The A55 5G is getting seamless updates right now. I guess there's a security patch that hit the A55, its first firmware update, and it came as a seamless update. The update actually shows a split progress bar, downloading and installing as one, verification as the other, and then once you reboot, it's a little bit longer than your standard boot, but not nearly as long as it would be otherwise.
It actually launched with seamless update support. It's just that people didn't figure it out that it supported it until the first update came.
Right. Well, that makes sense. That makes sense. So seamless updates, though, that's not something that has to be that has any sort of extra special hardware requirement, right? Like old Samsung phones, could they be updated with a new firmware update that enables it going forward?
The only problem, you can retrofit existing devices with AB partitions, which is the underlying mechanism that it works, but it's risky doing it at scale because any error or bug could lead to significant data loss for users. And even though this is a feature, seamless updates, that's existed since Android Nougat, it's actually evolved over years, and there is somewhat of a good reason why Samsung hasn't adopted it. So just switching over to this webpage right here, you can kind of see there's a different variations in the way that you can implement seamless updates. So the original iteration actually took up quite a significant amount of space, actually almost double the space of the original installation size to do seamless updates. But starting with Android 13 and Android 14, they've kind of made it on par with the original. So non-AB is on this left column, this left one right here. That's what Samsung has been using for a very, very long time. Modern Android devices like Pixel phones use this on the very right called virtual AB compressed. And you can see down here at the bottom row, it says total storage required to apply OTA. Non-AB, which was what Samsung was using, was about 5.9 gigabytes, versus virtual AB compressed about 6.6 gigabytes, almost the same size. Versus the original iteration of AB updates about 9 gigabytes. So you needed a significant more storage space to do updates. So there's kind of that's kind of the reason why Samsung has not supported AB updates for so long. It just took up so much more space, and there might have been other reasons like NOx or I don't know exactly. Samsung phones are very unique in how they're structured and their firmware. But it's a surprise, and it's long overdue for them to finally introduce this feature on a phone. Hopefully their future phones continue to add seamless update support.
Yeah, indeed. There you go. So if you've been waiting.
All right, and what else is going on in Samsung, MIshaal?
Yeah, so right before the show aired, Samsung actually publicly announced the rollout date for OneUI 6.1, which is their next major OS update for existing Galaxy devices. This is rolling out for the Galaxy S23 series, the Z Flip 5, the Z Fold 5, starting March 28th, and it'll roll out sometime this week for the Tab S9 series. So what does OneUI 6.1 bring? Most notably, it brings most of the Galaxy AI features that Samsung announced with the Galaxy S24, such as not only Circle to Search, which is actually Google's feature, but a lot of the image editing features in the Samsung Gallery app, the features in the Samsung Voice Recorder app. It also includes the live translate feature in the Samsung phone app, interpreter, Note Assist, Chat Assist, all these different features that Samsung announced with the S24 launch. A lot of those features are coming to existing Samsung devices. So you have that to look forward to if you have a S23 series, Z Flip 5, Z Fold 5, or Tab S9 device.
Cool. All right. So lots of Samsung goodness coming down the pike.
Samsung goodness.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I'm usually loath to say anything nice about Samsung, but I have to say their cloud AI strategy has been remarkably solid. For some of the frustrations that my Pixel Fold pals have had with things like maybe not always being synergistically updated on Pixels, it has been really refreshing to see Samsung go back and say, well, yeah, you're going up to a server. There's really no reason why this phone can't have this feature too. Enjoy.
Right. Yeah. And another bit of goodness is our patrons, patreon.com/AndroidFaithful. Trying to find the thingy thing here. Patreon.com/AndroidFaithful. If you are a patron, you have the opportunity to participate on a weekly basis of the picking of a news story that we read on the show. And let's take a look at the poll here for this week. Who created the image, first of all?
I'm pulling it up right now. This is one of my favorite images that we've gotten, by the way. It is solid. When you think of Android news, you think of an old-timey 1940s reporter going, you see here, I got the latest Android news for you. And this comes thanks to Josh Rose, who sent this in. I love the lighting. I love everything about it.
Yeah.
You know, you see this image,
good.
you know exactly this is 1947, and he's covering all the Android news coming out of Hollywood. So.
I don't know what this thing is hanging off the table, but
I think it's a light. I think it's a light hanging off the table. And for our audio listeners, it is a fantastic AI generated image of a little Android bug droid with a fedora in a suit typing at a typewriter, and it's fantastic. So
yes, indeed. All right, so thank you for submitting that. We had 3 story options for this week, and the clear third place is the S Pen on the Galaxy S24 Ultra stinks, literally.
I thought that was a sure.
I thought it was going to win,
but I'm surprised it got so low.
I'm so glad it lost. That says so much of your audience.
Samsung making smelly S Pens.
Smelly S Pens is a loser. Also a loser, Google Keep readying new bottom bar that's more like an island. That got 40% of the vote. The S Pen got 11%, by the way. And coming out with almost half of the votes, Google Contacts, making it easier to set custom ringtones for individual contacts. Seems to be rolling out. Some users are starting to see this, so you can go ahead and add your own custom ringtones to particular contacts. So when I call you, Ron, it can be like a wrestling theme of Randy Macho Man Savage.
So this is I had this on my G1 when Android first came out.
Yeah.
I went through a process of having my friends pick the song they wanted when they called me and all this sort of stuff, and then we slowly lost it to the ether through the years, and now 10 years later again. It's back.
Yeah,
so
what was once old is now new.
Yeah,
again.
exactly. So, and now I don't have the time nor the inclination, nor do I ever have my phone not on silent. So I'm not going to use this whatsoever.
Totally.
When was the last time you heard your phone actually ring? Anybody?
I don't know. Possibly years.
Yeah, exactly.
Been a while.
I mean, so much so that I don't know what ringtone. Like, someone could call me right now, and I have no idea what would happen if I turn the volume up.
Ron, your phone is ringing. That's not my phone.
That's not my phone.
I don't know what that is.
That's a wind chime. No. Yeah, this is neat. I mean, it's a cool feature. We definitely have wanted for the past 10 years, right?
Maybe you'd unmute your ringtone if you knew that you could assign all of the amazing songs that you have in your playlist to different contacts.
That would be
maybe
cool.
Then. Maybe that's what they're trying to do.
Possibly.
Anyways, thank you for voting for that. Thank you, MIshaal, because that was your tweet that we were just referencing. And big thanks to Richard Peck from the UK, Ruth White from Maryland, and Abdullah from Patreon. All from Patreon. All 3 patrons at patreon.com/Android Faithful. You too could get your name called out. You too could vote on next week's story if you support us. Patreon.com/Android Faithful. We are so entirely grateful for those of you who support us behind the scenes. Thank you.
Indeed. All right. Well, up next is hardware, and we've got some cool hands-on hardware at the moment. I know myself, you all know that I love a good tablet, right?
Yeah, I think I've learned that over the years. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm always interested in seeing the new tablets that are coming out. So when the fine folks from HMD got in touch with me and offered up the Nokia T21 tablet, I of course said yes. I would like to check out this tablet. So the Nokia T21 series tablet. This has been HMD's been making this and making it available internationally for a while. The T20 before this, the T21 looks to be one of the first ones that's available domestically. So you can actually get this at Walmart for the low price of $239. And guess what, everybody? I got this hands on, so much so, MIshaal, I'm using my Pixel as a webcam for my brand new overhead cam.
Oh
yes, look at this.
What?
So here is the so our video viewers can see the lovely box to the Nokia T21, and I have it right here underneath the box, and it is a nice looking tablet. It is I would call this like a budget/premium tablet because it feels like a premium tablet on the outside and it's got budget stuff on the inside. But that's not bad because if you're looking for a tablet, maybe you don't want to spend a ton of money on a Pixel tablet or a Samsung tablet or whatnot. And I don't want everyone to see my code, so I'm going to go offside. There you go.
Oh no, with your top-down camera.
Yes, there it is. So the tablet is I forget the exact dimensions. I don't know, Jason, if you could look just to see what the specs are on the screen because I don't have it handy. But it feels nice. I can hold it in one hand, as you can see here. It's a little smaller than my Pixel tablet as a comparison to it. And like I said, it feels like a premium tablet. It's got that nice kind of metal feel, that metal backing on it. It's got, tablets with cameras I just think are very funny, but it's got an 8 megapixel on the back and an 8 megapixel on the front. You don't really need your tablet for camera purposes, but it's good for webcam use or for other kind of instances where you want to take a quick picture or something like that. And anyway,
10.36 inches, Ron.
10.36 inches. That's pretty good. It's a slightly different aspect ratio. I forget what the exact aspect ratio.
5:3.
5:3. There it is. Right.
Yeah,
So you don't get you get some bars when you go full screen and that sort of thing. The best thing about this tablet is that it is as close to stock Android as I've seen on a device in a long time. There is very minimal bloatware on this device at all. It ships with Android 11, and then what can only be described as a several hours long update process. I got it up to Android 12. I felt like I was updating all day while I was doing it, but eventually I did get to Android 12. So you don't get any of the neat bells and whistles that you would get with a Pixel tablet with the latest version of Android 13 for tablets. But it's slowly getting there. It comes with all the standard Google kind of out of the box apps, and the only additional apps are Netflix, Spotify, ExpressVPN, and HMD's own personal little My Device app, which is there. I guess they're trying to build their ecosystem within HMD, and those are the only. I don't know why it's taking so long to load, but yeah. Those are the only apps that are on it aside from the standard Google apps. So it's pretty much a clean blank slate.
That's pretty trim.
Now, that said, I was curious to see how it performed because it does have kind of less than specs because it is a bit of a budget tablet. So I ran Geekbench kind of performance tests on it, and so it got a score of 424 on the single core on the CPU and 1,474 on the multi-core, and the GPU score came in at 456. Now, to give that comparison, if you don't know what those numbers mean, if you've never used Geekbench before, they run all these tests and ultimately come up with a number. I ran those same tests on my Pixel tablet, and so the CPU performance on the Pixel tablet was on the single core was 1,383. So that's compared to the 424 that this tablet gets. And the multi-core was 3,657 on the tablet compared to 1,474 on the Nokia. And then the GPU got 3,971 compared to a score of 456. So this is considerably less performance-based than the Pixel tablet. And where that comes across is it comes across in switching apps, opening and closing apps, doing any sort of that kind of processing. I did not run into any problems with YouTube with video playback or anything like that. And I don't know why it's not doing that now. But, basically what you would use as a tablet, whether it's media, for my uses of a tablet, being media consumption, reading, etc. If I didn't want to spend $500 on a tablet, I would totally consider this tablet. It's not a complete hunk of junk. Right? Like I said, it feels nice. And again, you can hold it in that one single hand. And it is such a blank slate that you can pretty much do whatever you want with it at this point. So, so that's the Nokia, the Nokia T21 tablet from HMD. It's on sale at Walmart for $239. So you could totally pick it up for that price. And if you're looking for a quality build, budget-ish tablet, I would give it a recommendation. That said, if I said, if you can afford it, I would say go the Pixel tablet over this, or one of the higher end Samsung ones, because they give you a slightly better kind of full-fledged experience. But for under $250, this is pretty solid. So.
Yeah, I mean, 64 gigs of storage, 4 gigs of RAM. That 4 gigs of RAM is, today's day and age is a killer. That's gonna really limit you.
But where it is in the price range, you got to make some concessions.
Well, and at that price, we're kind of talking an appliance tablet. Like, you're not getting this with the expectation it's going to get a ton of software updates, and it's not even up to date now. But as that video viewer, you want to read some comic books on it, do some stuff like that. Like, I think that's pretty solid.
Low intensive games. Not high intensive, not heavy GPU games, but if you want to do a
10 to 1 says if you fire up a round of Nittins, it's still gonna chug.
Yeah.
So
so anyway, so there's the Nokia T21. I give it like a thumbs medium. There you go. Not a thumbs down, but not a wholehearted thumbs up. But that's
a horizontal thumb.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. Right, and that was my first overhead cam thing. So
love
we look forward
it.
to more. Yeah,
that's great. I think I had to do that to my upstairs studio too. Get one of the assortment of old phones that I have all on my back display down here.
MIshaal, you inspired me
to work.
The use of the use. I was like, wait a minute, I can use and I do want to thank a friend of the show, Burke, for providing some technical assistance on the setup and the rig, as he and I were chatting about it. So
excellent. Yes, I believe it's that Burke. Clap, clap. Burke approves. Good to see you, Burke. Cool. Well, I have spent not quite a month, but like 3.5 weeks with the OnePlus Watch 2. Got it on my wrist right now, which with my microphone setup, it's just easier for me to take it off my wrist, to be honest. So yeah, about 3.5 weeks with the OnePlus Watch 2, doing like different battery tests, different scenarios, using it just as my everyday, because normally I would say my everyday smartwatch is the Pixel Watch 2, and you can see side by side, there's a big size difference between these two. I mean, the OnePlus Watch 2, that's the thing, right? Like, it's known for the battery. I'll talk about that in a second. But it has a large battery because it's a large phone. So, smaller wrists this is not going to work on smaller wrists. If Flo was on the show, this would be the thing that she's complaining about with the OnePlus Watch 2, as she has done many times in the past on other wearables like this. But if you do have larger wrist and your like top tier priority is battery, and along with that, you want a fully functioning, Wear OS device. This has Wear OS 4, so it's very, it's exactly up to date. I mean, I don't think you can do better than this for a battery performance device that does pretty much all the things that you expect out of a fully functional smartwatch running Wear OS. I ended up getting, and I put it in my review. I actually did earlier publish a review to my channel, but I did some battery tests, and I mean, I was able to get like something like 130 hours out of this with AOD off, the always on display off. When I set it full default with always on display on, I got 103 hours out of it, which is just nutso when you think about it. I mean, that's 4-ish days right there that you're getting without the need to put it onto a charger. And I know for some people that's a really big deal, like being able to go day after day after day not putting it on a charger. I think that's the question that I have, is like, still at the end of the day, incredibly impressive that you can do that with the OnePlus Watch 2. But like, my habit is to put it on a charger. And so all I really care about at my core with a smartwatch is, does it get through the most extreme day that I have? Can I take it off incredibly early in the morning and put it on the charger incredibly late at night, having used it a lot throughout the day, and still have, let's say, 20% remaining, so I feel comfortable, that I wasn't pushing it right to the edge. And, I can generally do that with the Pixel Watch 2. I think I also kind of have a little bit of a preference for a bit smaller of a watch face than what I have with the OnePlus Watch 2. I could totally do it with the OnePlus Watch 2 just fine. but I think I do prefer something a little bit smaller. But yeah, this is a really impressive device, and I think what they're doing with the hybrid architecture is something that I hope other smartwatch makers in the Android space emulate, because it obviously works really well to have that hybrid architecture, to be able to offload some of the functionality, some of the core functionality to a lower power processor, and then, you know, have your Wear OS layer. That is optional, by the way. You can deactivate the Wear OS layer and still use this smartwatch with, you know, something like 75% of its functionality, just shedding away the Wear OS. And you end up getting days upon days out of it even further than what you're used to if you do that. I didn't really do any tests in that mode though, because I don't really envision myself doing that. The original OnePlus Watch ran entirely on that other OS, RTOS, and which is fine. You could get like 7 days out of it. I think I got 7 or 8 days out of that when I tested that a few years ago. But it's not Wear OS. It doesn't have the Play Store. You can't do third-party watch faces. You can't do, you know, kind of like the fitness, some of the advanced fitness tracking possible, you know, capabilities that you get roping into Google's ecosystem. There's just certain things that it's not going to be able to do because it's not Google. And so I don't know. I was pretty darn impressed with this. $300. If you want to see the full review, I do have it up on my YouTube channel, yellowgoldstudios.com, and I put them side by side and just published the review earlier today after a lot of work.
And of course, it looks
Jason,
great again. Great job, Jason.
So this is it on my wife's wrist, by the way.
Oh, jeez.
Check out that honker.
I've actually, you know, I've had the watch for a little bit longer than you did. I did do the hands-on initially for Android Faithful, and like, one thing I got to say is it actually has changed the way I use my smartwatch. Like you mentioned, you still charge your watch every night, right? That's the habit of yours. But I actually have stopped counting the number of days since I've charged my watch. Like I actually do not know when the last time I charged my watch is, because it not only charges super fast, but like it lasts so long that I have to stop caring about actually charging it every day or even every other day. Like I just wait for it to say, actually just right now, I got the 20% battery remaining alert. So maybe now I'll throw it on the charger for like 5 minutes or like 10 minutes,
and you'll be good
have
to
it top
go.
it back up, and then
not
care about when I have to charge it next. It's just that lasts that long. It's completely changed how I
exact
use
same
and charge my
relationship
watches.
I also have with OnePlus's fast charging. Is I'm not trying to put my phone down on pads or plugging it in when I'm, I guess I need to charge my phone. I'll take 10 minutes. All right, cool. And I just did a trip down to San Diego for 3 days, and you're like, I'm not taking my charger. I don't need to. It's gonna be
that makes me sweat just thinking about it.
But for 3 days, I went with 100%, came back with 40, and you know what? That was great. That's exactly what I want the watch to do. I'm not thinking about managing it and like, okay, now in the hotel room, I've got this charger and I've got this block. I'm going to bring my U-Green, so I've got all these extra ports so that I can plug in this cable, and I don't have to worry about losing the little puck in my backpack because I can just leave it at home. So it's stuff
Speaking
like
of the
that.
puck, sorry,
Yeah.
go ahead. The puck is detachable. That's such a huge difference compared to the Pixel Watch 2. I love that.
What's great is
love
it's
having
you can, I mean, like Juan, you don't have to worry about taking it with you. You can leave it at home, or because it's so small, you can just bring it and just plug it into your USB-C cable, and like that's great.
It's because it's so small, I'm worried about traveling with it, because I've got a stupid backpack full of gear and stuff, and I don't want to lose cables and adapters and pieces and parts. So if I know I'm going to only be out for like a week, I'm not going to take the charger with me, because I can get away with RTOS for 12 days on a charge if I absolutely need to. I was already in kind of that habit with the Tick Watch, because the Tick Watch was a good 3 to 4 day battery life watch too. And this is just taking it to another level. Like, this is so refreshing to kind of have a device that I don't babysit as much to kind of get me through my day.
Yeah, I kind of pegged this watch as like the watch for people who don't want to experience battery anxiety anymore, because that's what it does. It kind of alleviates that, like you were saying, Mishaal. And another thing that I think really helps this is because I will admit, like as I've been using this, I don't put it on a charger every day because I don't have to. I guess what I was saying is like I don't mind putting it on at the end of the night because it's just kind of part of my ritual. But what I like about not having to put this on the charger is it's not running at full power overnight if you have that auto hibernation setting going. And so you set the times to say between 11 p.m. and 6:30 a.m., switch that sucker to auto hibernation. When it's off my wrist, it goes to the low power mode and it wakes up. You know, when I wake up in the morning, it maybe lost a couple of percents, maybe. And, you know, and so you end up, the battery is used when you're using it and not the other times. You know, so it's really, really smart how they implemented the hybrid architecture, how they worked with the power management throughout. The fact that you can't really even tell as a user that it's using one chip and not the other, and that there's any sort of like handoff happening. I mean, the only time you really notice that is when you go into the settings and you effectively say, turn off smart mode, go into power save mode, and then you kind of see the process. But when they're working in tandem, you wouldn't even know the difference. And it's just it's a really fantastic watch, I have to say. I'm really impressed that OnePlus could figure this out, and companies like Samsung and Google have it. You know, like bravo, OnePlus. Like,
Google figured it out because they worked with OnePlus to implement it. Like we talked to Bjorn Kilburn about that and the Wear OS angle of it. They just have chosen not to yet, and I think that, you know, by all,
I wonder if they will.
Yeah, it's so funny.
I think this will be opening up to other manufacturers. I would be very surprised if next gen Pixel Watch and Galaxy Watch don't have similar, maybe not exactly the same full RTOS, but similar sort of different power modes. Because this was also kind of a feature on the TicWatch. The TicWatch had a low power sports mode that still did heart rate and step tracking, and it was a basic timepiece.
Very similar then.
And you could run it for like 2 weeks, you know, on a charge. You just shut off all the Wear OS stuff because Mobvoi always used a separate custom core. They didn't always use the Qualcomm Plus chip. So they had a low power state that was essentially its own unique watch environment, and then you would fire up Wear OS for all of the fancy computing stuff. Again, it's like there are so many good ideas out here, and I think OnePlus has definitely kind of taken that next step for this hybrid arrangement. I'll be shocked if Samsung doesn't have an answer for this next year.
Yeah. Well, what I think is just most interesting about this whole story is that the OnePlus Watch, the original watch, was so derided and such a swing and a miss, and this now is the complete 180 opposite. You know, I've yet to hear anybody aside from complaining about the size of the chunk. I haven't heard anybody criticize this watch in any capacity. So, yeah, just funny to see how they turned it around. So,
it's good to see.
I totally agree.
Indeed,
it's a good comeback story.
All right. Well, speaking of comeback, Mishaal, Qualcomm can't count them out yet, can you?
Yeah, that's
they
right.
keep coming back with more chips.
Coming back with new chips.
Don't call it a comeback.
At the beginning of last week, they announced the Snapdragon 8S Gen 3, and at the end of last week, they announced the Snapdragon 7 Plus Gen 3. So what's the difference between the 7 Plus Gen 3 and the regular Snapdragon 7 Gen 3? Well, the 7 Plus Gen 3 has boosted CPU and GPU performance, supports Wi-Fi 7, but most importantly, supports on-device generative AI. So it can run several large language models on-device, such as Gemini Nano and Llama 2. That's basically it. That's all you really need to know about the chipset, besides specific numbers. But expect to see this chipset land in upper mid-range devices from OEMs like OnePlus, Realme, and Sharp. And in fact, OnePlus actually already did announce a smartphone powered by this new chipset. Only available in China right now, the OnePlus Ace 3V, but it's rumored to be launching internationally as a OnePlus Nord 4. So hopefully we hear more about that device soon.
Nice. Cool. But he's getting their AI chip capabilities. It's a race right now.
Yep.
AI, all the things.
All the things. AI, all the things. No, that doesn't work.
You went Tom Brokaw. That was great. Kuala Lumpur.
All right. Well, let's move on from hardware into apps because a couple of little quick app news, right, Jason?
Yeah, let's do some app speed round because we are a little long right now. Epic Games, we're talking about Apple earlier and antitrust, and I think the OGs in taking Apple to task at this point were Epic Games in a long, arduous battle with Apple over bringing its Epic Games Store to iOS. Apple has been losing that battle, of course. So now the Epic Games Store coming to iOS, and since it's coming to iOS, you better believe it's also coming to Android. Epic Games Store tweeted out the news. No date to expect the arrival quite yet, but this is going to allow Epic to avoid paying Google 15%. Well, so the deal is you pay Google 15% up to $1 million in revenue, and then beyond that, 30%. My understanding is that Epic would not have to pay that anymore. Instead, Epic would earn 12% on sales, with the remaining 88% going to developers in the store. So that's it's going to be a big loss for Google, a big gain for Epic. Obviously, that's why they're so interested in making this happen.
I'm so excited about this. Yeah. This is huge. I don't think people always remember we've had like the Amazon App Store. Humble Bundle used to have its own Android App Store, and like I had a bunch of games through there. I've been waiting for like Steam to become the Steam of Android gaming too. This is going to bring developers to a space where I can't imagine an outcome from this which won't be better quality games on mobile and better access to those games on mobile. So I'm really stoked. This could be pretty epic.
It's wow, that's cringy. But you did it. It's okay. But it's a huge opportunity for indie game developers, I think, and smaller game developers, and just to have it be in a gaming centric. And knowing Epic, they're gonna push the boundaries wherever they can because that's the kind of company they are. So
unfortunately for Epic, I think this is going to fail massively. Because on PC, for example, there's no really good centralized app store on the par with like Google Play Store on Android or the Apple App Store on iOS. So there's already a culture and like a history. People know they have to go to websites, to specific services to download most of their apps, right? But on Android and iOS, there's already too much market penetration of Google Play Store and Apple App Store. People just go to those app stores to download all their apps. The only hope for something like Epic Game Store to succeed is to get a whole bunch of big publishers to distribute their apps only on those stores and market the heck out of it. But the problem is big publishers don't always see eye to eye. They might want to launch their own game store so they can have their own commission. So I just don't see this working out because it would require Epic uniting basically the entire gaming industry to decide we're not going to post on Google Play anymore. We're going to only post on Epic Game Store. And that's too much of a big risk and too much of a big gamble for them to take. And especially on the iOS side, this is only going to be launching in Europe. And even then, Epic still has to pay Apple a fee because Apple is charging this core technology fee to even distribute the Epic Game Store. So I just don't think it's going anywhere. It's a nice endeavor, right, to see if they can break out of the duopoly, but I just don't see it actually landing.
All right.
I think you're right in the short term, but I think this is also the long-term play at what we see in every changing trend for PC gaming. Like, look at the excitement that so many companies have been able to foster with things like handheld gaming devices. And we can point to something like the Nintendo Switch and then also say, like, well, yeah, but like a 3-year-old Android phone is demonstrably more powerful than a Nintendo Switch. What we need are the developers and the interest and the market to start building around portable gaming devices, and then also the differences that we're seeing. Like I was just testing out the new X Elite chip from from Qualcomm, that new Snapdragon chip that's gonna be really disruptive for PCs. So we're gonna be seeing a whole bunch of different gaming avenues arriving all at the same time. So Epic being able to start this now means that they'll have an entrenched hold if we start to see a market develop. It's better to be at the forefront of that than to wait for the market to prove itself and then try to build your store on top of that. So that's why I'm excited is, immediately nothing's going to change. You're going to fire up the Epic Game Store for Android and it's basically just going to be Fortnite. And you're like, okay, cool. Yeah, that's what we've always had. But for them to have the infrastructure in place, I believe is going to be the change where we start seeing like, well, maybe an Android gaming handset starts to make a lot more sense when we've got silicon that can back this up and tremendously outpower some of these other devices that we've been using. I think it's a long con. I think it's a long play, but it's better, I think, in the long run. I think Epic's in the right direction. It's going to be laughable to start.
Yep. Well, we'll see. We're definitely going to watch it closely. All right. Well, quickly for you Google Wallet users, all around the country, all around the U.S. and the world, internationally, you may have noticed that you need to unlock a little more than often when using it. Google's implemented some changes now that have adjusted the threshold of payment amount that requires an unlock. So for example, there's a 25 euro threshold in Belgium, a 30 euro threshold in France. Here in the US, unlock is now required for all transactions except for transit, which is really interesting. So basically, I mean, they just want to make sure you're verifying your you before you're making any payment. So I understand where this is coming from. It's funny because I always unlock, like when I'm in Walgreens and I go and pay, I just assume you needed to unlock to pay. And Jason, you'll be proud of me. I've been wearing my Pixel Watch 2 when I go into the city. I've been using the Google Wallet watch payment on the New York subway, which is awesome. All you got to do is I kind of double tap the button on the watch and just tap it onto the subway and go through the turnstile. It's very very effective. So I'm glad that they're not requiring unlock for transit, because you don't want to be held up in that moment. And that's only
that'd be super
$3 or
stressful.
whatever. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so a little more security on Google Wallet, requires you to unlock a little more, type in your PIN, but it's money, so let's be safe. So. Yeah.
Let's all be safe.
Yeah.
Around here.
All right, MIshaal, you got the last one?
Yeah, and very briefly, if you have a OnePlus or Xiaomi device, you can now go into your stock gallery app and enable Google Photos integration. So previously, you could only back up your photos from the OnePlus gallery or the Xiaomi gallery to Google Photos, but now you can actually pull in your entire Google Photos library into those stock gallery apps by enabling this synchronization option once you go to the gallery app and enable it in Google Photos. So this allows you to seamlessly view and make edits to your entire Google Photos collection right from your stock gallery app. So if there's any particular editing features that you like in the OEM default app, you can now use those instead of Google Photos Suite. The only downside is that albums aren't synced both ways. So if you like to organize your photos into albums a lot, that's one thing that's missing. So that's why this feature is opt-in, thankfully, so you can go in and opt in or opt out if you don't like it.
Cool.
Sounds like that could possibly get a little confusing, but I also think that's a pretty handy feature. Pretty nice to have that.
Right, and this is available not just OnePlus, but also Oppo and Realme devices, all of the BBK devices that run Oxygen OS/Color OS with a recent version of the stock Photos app, as they call it, as well as on Xiaomi devices with their own, the latest version of their gallery app.
Cool.
Very nice.
All right. Well, that will wrap up apps. And now we want to hear from you, the audience who listens and watches us. You can email us at contact@androidfaithful.com. Always great to hear from you. Thank you, everyone who writes in. We got a bunch of email in the past week. We can't get through it all. But what's great is that we've gotten a lot of responses to stuff from the episode. Like last week, we got a lot of responses to last week's episodes. It's so nice to see. Also, if you are a patron, you can send us a message via Patreon. We receive messages there via the direct message function, so you can always email us there. But MIshaal, you've got the first email, which did come in from Patreon, actually. So
That's right. This first email comes in from Alpan23 on Patreon, who wrote in to say that I'm one of the few Android users in my office. We're quite iOS heavy in the UK too. And one argument friends that use iOS always give me for sticking with Apple is, quote, security. Historically, Android has had quite a bad reputation, but now that we have Pixel phones, which Google patch up monthly, is it fair to say that an Android device can be as secure as an iPhone from malware/spyware perspective? If you were to not jailbreak your Pixel, are you as safe online and on the Google Play Store as you would be on the Apple App Store? In light of the DOJ suing Apple, this question becomes even more interesting as Apple has used the privacy and security excuse as one of the reasons behind their monopolistic practices.
And we're all nodding vigorously. I
Yeah.
think. Do
Yeah.
we agree that the answer is yes to
Yes.
his question? Right.
Yeah, it's different
So-
threats, but I wouldn't say any one platform. And MIshaal, you were literally just saying, like, as we were talking about the DOJ case, like, yeah, a part of this is a legitimate argument about privacy and security, and then a lot of this is also just marketing. So
So,
I kind of feel
when
like
it comes to
we've
you
reached
as an
parity.
individual user, right? The argument that Apple and Google like to make to disallow or disincentivize side loading or third-party app stores is that as an aggregate, when you're talking about billions of users, you're including your 80-year-old grandma who might use your phone, right? She or he or your grandparents, they might not know what's safe and what's not the safe. Like what looks like an obvious scam to you might not look like an obvious scam to them, right? So they might download an app that's malicious. But the thing is, you as an individual user, you're listening to this podcast, you're probably more tech savvy than most. There's nothing you need to worry about. So I don't know exactly. I can't talk about iOS security because I'm not like an expert at all on iOS. But when it comes to Android, really all you need to do is pay attention to, like, does the app seem legitimate, right? Number two, what permissions does it ask for? This is the biggest one, because even if an app seems malicious, it can't really do anything unless you give it permission to do things, right?
Right.
So if like a skee ball app asks for your SMS permission, right? That's obviously sketchy as heck. Don't give it that, right? So like ask yourself, does this seem legitimate, right? Because when you're installing an app, you're not giving it a black box to do anything it wants, right? It can only do whatever permissions you give it access to. Like, of course, there are some things potentially you could want to worry about, like low-level Bluetooth firmware bugs that could lead to an app gaining root access on your device. But you can't like actually factor that into your security consideration because you can't prevent that, right? That's not something you really got to consider. But if you're just thinking about how to keep yourself secure, just use some common sense. Look at the apps you're installing. Look at the publisher behind the app on Google Play. Look at what permission it's asking for. Look at what you're granting it. Think about why it might need that permission, and you'll stay safe. Like, for the vast majority of cases, I don't think you have anything to worry about if you're on Android. There's so many built-in security features that sandbox apps, that sandbox processes from apps, that prevent apps from miscommunicating with another app, that prevent apps from leaking data from another app. There's so many things that are built in that take care of a lot of the really basic security concerns that you might have.
Yeah.
So my question about this, which triggered the thought I had, was there was some point in time where the Android, the Google Play Store and Android stuff that wasn't as secure, right? But that was a long time ago, right? Like, did the sins of the past become the baked-in fact of the present?
Yes.
Yeah.
Kind
Yes.
of. Yeah,
I
would
believe
s-
so. I think by
Yeah.
and large, a lot of the people who don't pay close attention to this stuff, but know what Android is, and and many of them have an iPhone and everything, still operate under the playbook that existed 10 years ago, under the news that was very pervasive, that Android was inherently insecure because it was open. And they might not even realize because it was open. They just heard Android is insecure enough to continue to believe that that's still the case. I think that's probably pretty true.
I think the reason also is because you still see headlines coming out like every
Yep.
week,
Oh, yeah.
basically saying there's this new malware campaign that is, one, most of the time distributed through apps outside of the Google Play Store, but also sometimes
Ding, ding,
within
ding.
the Google
Right.
Play Store, because
Yep.
Google's not perfect. Neither is Apple at policing their app store. Number
Right.
two, involved permissions that the user was tricked into or deceived into or just willingly gave to the malicious apps themselves to steal certain data, right? And you see these headlines and people misconstrue this idea as, oh, there are malicious apps being spread to Android users, therefore the Android OS itself is insecure, which is not true. There's just these headlines, and most of the time when you dig into it, like 95% of the time, it's because the user granted a permission they shouldn't have. And that's
God, and-
basically all I gotta
yeah.
say. Just be careful what
For-
you're granting.
Yep.
For however many years in the last handful of years, before All About Android went away, these security stories would come up every week. And when I'm picking the stories,
Yeah.
I would always look at them and be like, God, do I really have to put this in there again? Like there is always one of these stories, and it's exactly what you say. Okay, well, Yeah, it impacted 5,000 people, like in the, in the entire world, or the app was downloaded from third-party app stores illegitimate. It's like,
and
the
I
problem
know-
is people see those headlines and they automatically assume that means that
That's the
Android as a
narrative.
whole is indeed still unsafe. It's like, no, but you got to
Right.
understand the detail there it's very different than what people believe, I think.
And it's hard to get good data because I feel another major problem is the sort of security through obscurity tactic that Apple tends to, we just don't make as much noise when there are similar issues that are outside of a user's control. Like when a malicious app does make it through the App Store, we get this kind of flurry of headlines, and then it's like, oh, but Apple does it better. They caught the malware, so that's how Apple does it better. And you're like, well, yeah, but when we talk about catching malware on Google Play, that's evidence of Google not doing it better. Like there was recently, it was a password manager, and a malicious company made a clone of it. And it was convincing enough that iOS users were downloading this copycat and putting in all of their password manager credentials in there. You can get malware through Apple's App Store guidelines. But when there's another situation, like I want to say it was a little more than a year ago, Safari was leaking everything across browser tabs. So there's nothing a user can do. If you use a browser, any web service could see what was in every other browser tab. And you're like, well, where was the flurry of headlines about Macs and iPhones? Because that is a genuine consumer concern. That is a terrible situation to be in. And then iOS users, Mac users, just completely unaware that was the security threat that it was. And again, Apple not publishing any information on that until they had already long patched it. But for how long was this a concern? How long was this an operation? When did this bug get discovered in Safari, leaking all of your data across browser tabs? And it always seems to be kind of this one-way conversation when we talk about security. And from some of the comments in your chat right now, it's mostly a function of marketing. I feel Apple has done a much better job of selling their platform, and Google doesn't have the same relationship directly with consumers, except now building up a little bit more credibility by reinforcing that on the Pixel.
Yep. Fascinating. It's fascinating how you tell these stories. All right. Well, great email, Alpan23 on Patreon. Thank you. Our next email comes in response to the question we raised last week in last week's episode. Daniel writes in and says, "Greetings to the Android Faithful crew. The question was raised on why you should stay or leave Pixel. And for me, Google has me locked in with their call screening and hold for you and similar calling features. This is a deal breaker. I genuinely could not leave for a different phone that didn't have those features. Other pluses are clean Android experience, betas, and other first-to-Android type updates that other brands can take months or even a year to get. And all this is why I love Pixel. I'm currently on the Pixel 7 Pro, holding out for the Fold 2 to drop. Oh, and Ron, I updated my OS last Friday and got Circle to Search. Anyhow, keep up the great work, everyone. Sincerely, Daniel C. And thank you, Daniel, for weighing in on why you would stick with the Pixel platform. Juan, last week we were talking about saying, like, if you were on Pixel, what would it take you to jump, or vice versa. And just quick update on my Circle to Search drama. Still don't have it on my Pixel 8 Pro, but I was using my regular Pixel 8 on the for the webcam, for the overhead cam tonight, and I was like, oh, I wonder if I've got it on here. Sure enough, Circle to Search works fine on this sucker. I seriously think something with Google Play services or some sort of and I think if I factory reset, I probably would get it, but I don't need it that much, so it's fine. So
Well,
anyway,
I'd like to reinforce. I have my SIM card back in the OnePlus 12. I love the OnePlus 12. It's a great phone. Over the course of being on this live stream with y'all, I've had 7 spam calls.
Wow.
7.
Wow. 7?
It comes in these crazy waves where
crazy.
all of a sudden I'm just inundated with garbage. And now, to the credit of Android, all of those have come in as spam likely, but I have not been getting those calls alerting my attention or distracting me when my SIM card's in my Pixel. So just to kind of help reinforce a little data on that, there is absolutely a usability perk on the Pixel as one of the best communicator devices on the market today.
There it is. There's a good opinion. So
It's a pretty awesome feature.
All right, we got one more email. Jason, take it away.
All right, finally, Panzer Z on Twix. Oh, sorry, I read that wrong. David on Twix. I read the wrong part of the last sentence. Says, hey guys, so at least on my phone, the OnePlus 8 Pro, you can start navigation, then hit the lock button, then turn back on the screen where the map's navigation will still be showing running. Yes, I've seen this too. You're actually still on the lock screen, so it's like app pinning, where you can't get out of the app unless you swipe up to get the unlock screen prompt. Hope this helps. From a AAA fan who is now an AF fan, Panzer Z on Twix, aka David. Yeah, I've seen this too. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. Wouldn't it suck if you were driving and your phone locked or your screen went off, and you're driving, and then you try and turn on your screen, and your phone is locked, and then you have to unlock it while you're driving? I mean, that's just kind of a nightmare. So I think, that they're sandboxing it. They're not allowing you to go anywhere else unless you authenticate. But
Right.
yeah.
And
What is this? I'm trying to remember what this is in relation to.
Last week we got an email from a gentleman who pushes his wife in her wheelchair and takes long walks and wants to keep maps up and avoid the phone accidentally getting hit to tap onto another app or anything like that.
Okay.
So wanted to lock it on Google Maps. So this is a good solution here for them as well. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Turn off the screen. When you turn that screen back on, you'll still have the lock functionality of the phone, but the navigation will still be running. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Cool.
I would like to ask a question of your audience, because I have one really old car that has like no integration with any kind of data or services. And when I have navigation up and I get a phone call, how do I keep the phone call from completely wiping away the map screen? Because I don't have an Android Auto set up in this car. If anyone has an answer to that, I have tried numerous ways of like locking and pinning apps and stuff like that, where it also won't always even shrink the map navigation. It'll just take it all away, and then I have to multitask my way back from the phone call to my active navigation. So I don't know a thing,
driving.
and I would love for people to tell me how it's dumb that I don't know a thing on the internet.
Honestly, if you drive this car a lot, it might be worth investing in just one of those mini Android Auto /
I
CarPlay tablet
refuse.
things.
I'm being the cranky
Like,
old guy.
anywhere between a
yelling at
little over
kids
$100. Like I got one, like a 9-inch one for I think like 160 on like Amazon, and it works really well. It's full wireless Android Auto as well.
I just miss the sort of like the because it never worked well, but when we had sort of on phone screen Android Auto sort of launcher capabilities, I just wanted more of that. So
when there was at least somewhat of a solution versus a what of a solution.
Right? It was an attempt. It was so exciting, like, ooh, I can use Waze too. Wow. But no, there's nothing now. So
all right, well, if you have an answer to Juan's question, email us in, let us know, contact@androidfaithful.com. We want to hear from you. And yeah, please help Juan in his car navigation and phone call. So he's got to answer all those spam calls while driving. So
right. So bad.
Yep. All right, well, that's going to wrap it up for this week's Android Faithful. Juan, thank you so much for joining us. Juan, for those who aren't familiar with your work, where can folks find you on the internet?
I'm all over the place at SomeGadgetGuy across social media. SomeGadgetGuy.com is my home site where I try and tie a lot of my stories together. I also have a Patreon where I kind of keep my exclusive camera and photography sort of conversations. That's where all of that stuff lives. It's pretty easy to stumble on some of my work, and I always love just kind of catching a new geek thread conversation. It's a little broader, especially this year where I'm going to be covering a lot of laptop news as we get into the summer. So should be some pretty fun stuff.
Excellent. And I got to say, your appearances on this very show last summer talking about the X-Real glasses and all that sort of stuff. Predated the Vision Pro release, and it gets cited oftentimes on the show about the Infinite Desktop conversation we've had, and so
Also,
we appreciate your insights. So.
Every time I get to be on the show, guys, we get to have the friendly reminder that Apple is still holding Android location trackers hostage.
MIshaal,
so again, politically, it ties right into what we've been talking about: market pressure, DOJ, EU. My camera just died. Oh
Whoa,
no!
Look at that!
I turned into a rainbow.
Apple is intervening as they've heard you.
Oh, those
Juan's talking
jerks.
about it. Kill his camera. Kill his technology.
Yes, that's too funny. But
That's
yeah,
hilarious.
MIshaal, you've been tracking the Find My Network drama over this time period. I know you and Juan you have your team meetings offline to talk about the state of the Find the Network.
Oh, I'm still super cranky, and I've been reading MIshaal kind of like, hey guys, just a reminder on Mastodon, it's still Apple's fault.
So, all right, cool. Well, thank you so much, Juan. We appreciate you. Oh, there you are. Your camera is back. Good to see you.
Yay.
Okay. Well, speaking of Mastodon, MIshaal, where can folks find you on the internet?
Well, I'm focusing more on publishing articles and finding new things in Android. Like I have a whole big backlog of things to write about when it comes to Android 15. So if you want to support that work, please visit patreon.com/Mishaal and chip in. You can get access to my Discord community where I share a lot of the exclusive details and things that I'm working on ahead of time. And to be honest, like I am posting there more and more because, I just don't have time to write articles, research, and also comment on everything I find on Twitter. And if I post something on Twitter, that means I don't get the chance to write an article on it. So I'm trying to lean more towards article writing and trying to leave things more exclusive to Discord members who are, you can only get access to the Discord if you subscribe on Patreon. So if you want to hear a lot about what's coming in Android 15 before Google I/O and before Google announces it several months in the future, you can join my community and follow my work through Patreon and my socials.
All right, everybody, definitely please support
Heck
MIshaal.
yes.
He does the Lord's work.
Indeed.
Jason, where can people find that awesome OnePlus Watch 2 review that you shared with us tonight?
Well, on my YouTube channel, and I'm slowly trying to grow, just go to yellowgoldstudios.com, and the video, published like an hour and a half or literally like an hour before the show tonight. So it's early stages for the OnePlus Watch 2 review, but you can find it there, yellowgoldstudios.com. You can also support me at patreon.com/Jason Howell. There's so many different ways you can get in touch with me. I've even lost track of all the different ways. So just search for me and, just go to the channel. That's the one place you go.
That's all you got to do. So
that's all you got to do.
And for me, I'm on the internet. I'm at RonXO across all those various places. And I realized I didn't mention this last week when the episode came out. And Jason, I'm sorry I added my link late in the chat. But head over to ifanboy.com and on there, iFanboy's podcast feed. A couple weeks ago, we released our monthly Media Explode podcast where we talk about stuff. And we reacted to the 2024 Oscars and then talked a lot about movies, but then also talked about what TV we haven't started watching yet, and the other guys picked the next TV show for me to watch, and I picked their next TV show. It was a little game we played where we listed all the shows that I haven't had time to watch, and they picked the one I have to. So I'm watching Monarch: Legacy of Monsters on Apple TV Plus right now because that was on my list and I hadn't started watching it. And they said, we're going to make you watch about Godzilla, and I said, okay, and it's been good so far. And speaking of Godzilla, Wynn just popped into the chat and she said hello from Kyoto. So it is good to see her enjoying Japan and catching the end of the episode because that's going to wrap it up for this week's Android Faithful.
Oh, yeah.
As a reminder, this podcast live streams every Tuesday evening at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific on YouTube and on Twitch. So you can check that out live if you like. And then it releases to the podcast feed later that evening, which you can find links to subscribe to over at androidfaithful.com. But if you're listening to this, you're probably already subscribed. Tell your friends to go subscribe. We love the support. We love talking about Android. And we'll do it again next week because we are the Android Faithful.
Yes, we are. Now and forever.
Oh!
Hey, Android. Hey, Android. Oh, hey, Android.
So